insight, the users and the other stakeholders will get about the company through the auditor's report in the financial statement, and hence how much the communication and the interaction will increase between the CFOs, audit committees, auditors, and the regulators as well. So just to give you more about what the world is doing about these changes. Now, in UK, this standard, before the standard, I think in 2013 after the crisis, UK introduced changes to their governance code where it is required not only by the auditors to extend their audit report, but also by the audit committees to publish a report about the work that the audit committee has done. And in that report, the audit committee is required to explain all the significant issues that have been considered by the audit committees about the financial statement. So there is a reporting by the audit committee on the significant issues, and there is a reporting by the auditors in their report about all the significant risks which the auditors have considered and how those significant risks have been addressed. So some of the reports, I think if you, there is a report of Rolls-Royce, which is a 6-page report which identifies 7 significant risks. Key risks include revenue recognition, consolidation of SPVs, provision for contingencies, bribery and corruption is also identified as a significant risk. Vodafone, which is a telecom company, 8 pages report, 7 areas of focus: taxation, goodwill valuation, IT system and controls, revenue recognition. All those things were reported as significant risks and key audit matters. Now, you can see the auditor report is running now over several pages, say 8 pages, 10 pages, depending on the size of the company and the complexity. So, in US, the PCAOB is started the process of changing the standards in 2013, and Americans have used not the term key audit matters, they're using the term critical audit matters, and those critical audit matters are required to be communicated in the auditor's report as well. The requirements are more or less similar to the ISA requirements, but the standard is yet to be adopted and the effective date has not been specified because in the US, PCAOB is still holding round tables and taking feedback from the stakeholders before they decide on the final date of implementation. In Singapore, I think they're expected to adopt the standard in 2016. Malaysia also, because most of the jurisdictions follow ISA as their primary source of auditing standards and auditing requirements in their particular jurisdiction. So as there is a change in the auditing standards, those are adopted by the national standard setters as well. But I think in India, they're still, I think, at the same stage, more or less like we are, that we still have to decide at what time we should be implementing that standard, and that decision has to be not only of the ICAP but also of the SECP, and which is a major stakeholder in that decision and implementation. And so India is still to announce at least their effective date about the standard. Saudi Arabia, as I know, is planned to implement the standard next year, 2017, 1 year later than the ISB specified effective date. In some countries, I think Netherlands and UK have, as I said, early adopted the standard through their own changes in the legislation. In the UK auditing standard requirements, this change was brought, I think, 2-3 years back. And as a result, they are more ready to adopt these changes, which are now part of the auditing standards. So, implementing the change, as I said, there are 3 main stakeholders for the purposes of implementation. A, the audit regulators, SECP and the ICAP. Audit firms, which have to actually do this through their auditor's report, and the audit committees, which actually, on the receiving end, which have to be part of this process and be proactive as well with the auditors to look at those changes and also how best those changes can be implemented in their own circumstances. So, as regards regulators, their primary responsibilities is to amend the laws and regulations in a way that support the implementation of the standard. The audit firms, many of the audit firms have issued guidance, trainings, so much so that now I think, there's a big change also for the audit firms. Now, many auditors are not good in their communication skills. They're not as expressive. They're very good in technical terms. They understand auditing, they understand accounting, but let's actually acknowledge that it's not in Pakistan, it's around the world, I think. And this profession has recognized that. I think in many of the countries, they are now changing their patterns in recruitment. They're recruiting people with backgrounds in communication. They're recruiting people with backgrounds more in IT, not pure accountants, I think. I was reading somewhere, I think KPMG this time has recruited in UK more people which are non-accountants than accountants in the assurance section. So things are changing, world is moving, because auditing is also changing. It's no more just through the traditional auditing procedures. There are a lot of more involvement of IT, data analytics is playing a big role. So all these changes require change in the mindset of the auditors and the skill set of the auditors as well. So this is a big change for the auditing firms as well, because they also have to change their systems and processes in order to cope up with the revised requirements. The audit committees, as I said, and CFOs should get involved with the auditors much earlier stage in audit than currently. They need to be prepared, or they need to be aware at least of what comprises the key audit matters for a particular year of audit. In terms of the laws and regulation, I think it is important to note that in Pakistan we follow a particular form of audit report arise from company's ordinance, which requires the auditor to give a true and fair view on the financial statement, and also requires the auditors to express certain additional form of opinions on about, say, whether the company has maintained proper books of accounts, and whether their compliance with the company's requirements of the company's ordinance with relation to the accounts, whether the expenditure incurred and expenses made, and business conducted in accordance with the objects of the company, all those unique kind of opinions which are expected from the auditors. We are expected to give an opinion that all expenditure have been incurred for the purposes of the audit. Now, that is quite unfair for the auditors to be expected to review all expenditure from the point of view of whether business objects have been met or not. So quite onerous requirements in Pakistan. Now, as a result of these standards, these requirements will have to change. But the new standard also, because the SCCP's major apprehension may be that the company's ordinance requirements should be incorporated in some way or the other in the revised auditor's report. So yes, there is a section available in the revised auditor's report which says report on other regulatory requirements. So there are two sections in the auditor's report: report on the financial statements, and the second section, report on additional legal and reporting requirements. So all those requirements which are currently in the company's ordinance can go to that section easily, so that if the SCCP or the regulator still believe that the auditors should be reporting the same thing which actually the company's ordinance require, unless the company's ordinance is amended. So, what I'm trying to say is the implementation of this standard it can still be made with the present state of the company's ordinance, because there is a place available in the revised auditor's report to deal with those matters as well. Okay, now I just want to highlight also that if you look at our current laws, still under the Code of Corporate Governance, the audit committees are required that prior to the approval of their financial statement, they should review all the major judgmental areas, the going concern assumptions, any changes in the accounting policies and practices, compliance with accounting standards, significant adjustments resulting from the audit, related party transactions. So all these are key audit matters, actually. So audit committees, through the corporate governance regulations, are currently also required to review all the significant matters in relation to the financial statements, but they are not required to publish a report about it. Now, actually, the auditors will be highlighting those matters in the report, but the audit committee is still responsible and continue to be responsible for those matters. In UK, they have changed actually both auditor's report and the audit committee reporting requirements, where the audit committee report is also published, which explains how the audit committee have addressed and considered and reviewed those matters, which I think makes more logic and sense. Also, I think there is a requirement in the company's ordinance about director's report, but the director's report should only address any reservation, observation, qualification, or adverse remarks. So there is no requirement for the directors to explain the key audit matters. They are only required to respond about any reservation or qualification in the auditor's report. Under the listing regulations as well, there is a requirement to provide or disseminate material information about companies, about any mergers, acquisitions, etc. So all these legal requirements have to be considered while we select the key audit matters for the purposes of our audit report. Because from the audit committee, from the company's point of view, they need to make sure that what disclosure is coming out of the auditor's report through the communication of key audit matters is also aligned and consistent with their disclosure to the public through stock exchange dissemination of material information, through director's report, through audit committee report. So what I'm saying is from your point of view and from the audit committee point of view and the board point of view, it's important to synchronize all that information which will go from the company to the shareholders and public at large. So because if there is an inconsistency in one set of information provided by the company and then in the financial statements, auditors reporting a story which slightly is inconsistent with what has been reported earlier or not reported at all by the company, it can create a confusion and a problematic situation. So from your point of view, you need to be sure that all those communications are aligned and consistent. So my suggestion will be we need to take a holistic view. We just not only implement the auditing standards, yes, they are required to be implemented, but also make certain changes in our code of corporate governance, where the audit committee report should also cater for the significant issues which they have considered in relation to financial statements, like in other parts of the world. I think that will provide a holistic view of what the audit committee has done and what the auditors has done. I think those challenges I've already discussed that, you know, there will be maybe a confusion about key audit matters. People may believe that any paragraph in the auditor report is actually highlighting something negative, because people are used to looking at auditor's report in a way that wherever there is something additional, it means something negative. So I think in the initial years, more education and more awareness sessions needs to happen in order for the users to be aware of the change, because unless they are aware of the change, the risk is that when the first time they look at the report, they may be confused, and therefore they might possibly think that the auditors are now highlighting so many matters and may actually deem that the auditors want to highlight something negative about the company. So what I'm trying to say is that it's extremely important for us to hold these roundtables and discussions so that everyone is educated and prepared about the changes. In the last, I would say that, you know, one American philosopher said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So maybe through this visibility in the auditor's report, these matters may gain more attention in the board, and the boards may like to manage and address those matters through improved systems and controls, and ultimately it brings some more value to the company. And that is actually the objective and purpose, that ultimately by highlighting something and by changing something, actually it really brings a change in the substance of the matter itself. Thank you so much.